Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Der Herr ist mein getreuer Hirt, which translates to The Lord is my faithful shepherd. This is a pretty straightforward chorale, so we're just going to hop right into the analysis. A key we don't see super often, 3 sharps in the key signature. Start off with A, end with A. I reckon we're in the key of A major, and I think we stay in the key of A major for the entirety of the first section, the A section. The A section in the key of A. Our first cadence is an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of A. After our initial tonic triad, we have some passing tones in the tenor and the melody before we get another A major triad, A, E, A, and C sharp. Passing 7th in the bass before we get F sharp, F sharp, A, and D, which is D major in first inversion. That's a 4/6 chord. We then have E, B, G sharp, and E, which is E major in root position. It's a 5 chord. That's our dominant. Passing tone in the tenor before we get B, D, F sharp, and D. Kind of an interesting progression here. I think one could analyze this as a 2 chord, but I think this G sharp might be a more likely culprit. G sharp, B, D, and D, which would be a 7/6 chord. And I think this is maybe more likely of a chord that would find its way into this progression because a tonic triad follows it. Nothing wrong with 2 going to 1. In fact, we're going to see 2 go to 1 later in the chorale, but I don't know. It just feels like that to me. I think both chords are totally valid, and the fact that we can pick out either of the chords if we aggregate all of the notes that occur over the span of the entirety of the beat, I think either is fine. But ultimately we do go to a tonic triad, C sharp, E, A, and C sharp, which happens to be A in first inversion. Passing tone in the bass, E, E, G sharp, and B. That is our dominant in root position, followed by A major, A, E, A, and C sharp, which is our tonic triad in root position. Alright, we are still in the key of A major. We have another A major triad afterwards, passing 7th in the bass before we get F sharp, A, F sharp, and C sharp, which is F sharp minor in root position. That is a 6 chord in the key of A major, passing 7th in the bass before we get D, A, F sharp, and B, which is let's see, that is B minor 7 over D. That's a 2/6/5. And then we have a couple of passing tones as well. We do get a little bit of a passing tonic triad in first inversion here. We have C sharp, we have A, we have E, and we have C sharp, but we'll just talk about it. We don't have to put it on the page, but you can put it on the page if you'd like to, if you're following along. We then have B, A, D, and D, which we could just say that the chord is turning into root position here, but I think what's more likely to happen is instead this B, this D, and this A, they're all, or no, well, the A is actually going to be a chord tone, but if we look at the rest of the notes, we have A, E, and C sharp, which means that I think 1 is being implied here. If we're just looking at the harmonic rhythm and trying to get a chord on each beat, even though it's sort of like we have 2 going to 1, going to 2, going to 1 here. And it does feel like a lot of rapid movement here with a very static voice. It's an interesting texture that Bach creates with a lot of activity and very minimal activity in one of the voices. We then have G sharp, D, E, and B, which is E7 over G sharp. That's 5/6/5. This B is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. We then have C sharp, E, E, and A, which is interesting because we typically expect 5/6 chords to go to 1, but here we have it going to 1/6. Granted, the C sharp reverses course to A not long after, so that A is a chord tone. This D is not a chord tone. This A is also a chord tone, so we only need to mark the D here as a non-chord tone. It's a very brief passing tone. Here we have E, D, G sharp, and B, which is E7 in root position. That's a 5/7 chord. Passing tone in the passing tone in the tonic. What does that mean? Passing tone in the alto. Before we conclude our phrase with a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A major. Okay, B section. This phrase is in the key of B minor, and I don't think we modulate straight away, but we do modulate before this A sharp. So this A major chord here, we don't need to reanalyze that. This E major chord, however, I think is our pivot chord. So in the key of A major, it is our 5 chord, E, G sharp, E, and B. However, in the key of B minor, which is where we're going, it is our 4 chord. That is a, even though we don't have the sharp here because it's diatonic to the key signature, or it's a tone that's shared between A major and B minor. We have a melodic minor scale fragment here, G sharp, A sharp, and B. So what we have on the next beat is a chord that logically follows 4. We have D, A sharp, E, and C sharp. Rather, this D is an accented non-chord tone, and what we're really looking at is A sharp, C sharp, and E, which is A sharp diminished in first inversion. That's a 7/6 chord. That then goes to B minor, B, B, D, and F sharp, which is our tonic triad in root position. Passing tone in the alto before we get E, A, F sharp, and C sharp, where I think this E is an accented non-chord tone, and it's actually F sharp major. This is an A sharp, not an A natural, so that's our dominant F sharp major in the key of B minor. That then goes to G natural, B, F sharp, and B. I think this F sharp is another accented non-chord tone, and it's really E, G natural, and B that we're looking at here. It's like a 7/6 suspension almost, which is a 4/6 chord. It's our subdominant in first inversion, E minor, over G. That then takes us to F sharp 7, F sharp, A sharp, E, and C sharp, which is root position. This D is a passing tone, it's a non-chord tone, and then we cadence in a perfect authentic fashion in the key of B minor with a B minor triad, B natural, F sharp, D, and B. Alright, we're moving back to the key of A major briefly before we get an imperfect authentic cadence, or maybe you could even call it a plagal cadence, but I think it's more so an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of F sharp minor, which is kind of an interesting place to go. The minor dominant of the supertonic. It's not a super far away key. It's actually it actually shares a pitch collection with A major. But the fact that we go to A major and then we get thrown for a loop to F sharp, it has almost a deceptive effect. But I wouldn't go. Actually, maybe it's more likely a deceptive cadence than it is a plagal cadence. But I think there's an argument for it to be made that it's also a plagal cadence. We'll talk about it. This is a complex cadence with some or a nuanced cadence rather. So we have straight away we're modulating to the key of A major. This B minor triad is no longer our tonic; it is our supertonic now. We then have G sharp, B, E, and B, which is E major in first inversion. That's a 5/6 chord. And then we have A, E, and C sharp, which is our tonic triad, A major in root position, passing 7th on the bass, before we get F sharp, A, F sharp, and D. Similar progression to what we've started with at this point. We get our tonic triad, and then we get D major in first inversion. That's a 4/6 chord. That then takes us to E major, E, B, G sharp, and E, which is our 5 chord. So 1, 4, 6, 5 again, where the melody does something similar that we've heard before, kind of a revisitation or a recap with some slight variation. Here we get F sharp, A, F sharp, and D, which is D major again in first inversion. It's a bit of a deceptive progression where we have 5 to 6 in the bass. Some passing tones here in the lower voices, which give us G sharp, B, F sharp, and D, which is G minor 7 flat 5, or 7/7, which is where 4 wants to go to 7 via the cycle of falling fifths, and then we get 1 after that, A, C sharp, E, and C sharp, which is our tonic. I think this is actually where we start to see the shift to F sharp minor though, so if we say that this is our 1 in the key of A, it's also our mediant in the key of F sharp. We then get B, F sharp, D, and B, which is B minor in root position. That's our 4 chord. This G sharp is a passing tone, this F sharp is a chord tone, and this E sharp is kind of what makes it feel imperfect authentic. So the reason why I'm siding with imperfect authentic is the leading tone is present, and then we cadence on the tonic, if we look purely at the chord that's sort of implied for the majority of the beat, it's 4 going to 1. Therefore, it's a plagal cadence. If we look at the fact that an F sharp minor is our 6 chord, it is kind of like a deceptive cadence because we're ending on a tonic functioning chord that isn't the tonic, but it's not preceded by the dominant, so I think deceptive cadence is probably the least likely. But because the leading tone is there and Bach is known for being contrapuntal in his cadential situations, we could say that if we do pick apart the B, the G sharp, the E sharp, we have an E sharp diminished triad, which is our 7 chord in the key of F sharp minor. It's in second inversion, but really this B is less of a, it's more of a pedal tone than anything else because the chord is getting introduced progressively through the voices, right? We get the B here, we have G sharp introduced, and then we have the E sharp introduced, so they're just staggered, and there's typically a slowdown towards the end of the phrase as well, so we get that little rallentando, and the chord will be heard for longer proportionately than, let's say, a chord that has a, like a 16th note in the middle of the phrase. But you notice that the shorter note values rather are introduced relatively close to the cadence rather than in the middle of the phrase. But regardless, we do modulate back to the key of A major in the last phrase. This F sharp minor chord that we get after the F sharp minor chord in the cadence is also our 6 in the key of A major, passing tone in the bass before we get D, F sharp, and B, which is B minor over D, which would be a 2-6 chord. We could call it a 2-6 chord. We could also call it G sharp, D, F sharp, and B, which would be a G sharp minor 7 flat 5 over D, so a 7-4-3 chord. And the reason why I think it's more likely is because we're being followed by a tonic, and I feel like a dominant functioning chord going to a tonic functioning chord is a little bit more, this F sharp's actually a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it, even though it's the G sharp that's really contributing as the root of this chord, in my opinion. Whether you look at it as 2-6 because 6 wants to go to 2, or 6 going to 7-4-3, a tonic is following it, so really I think both of these analyses are fine. C sharp, A, E, and C sharp, which is our tonic in first inversion, A major over C sharp. Then we have B, A, D, and D. We had a similar chord to this before, like right here where it looked like we had accented non-chord tones. However, in this case we have the D held. So even though we have eighth notes happening in the outer voices, I think this is an incomplete 2-7 chord, which is fine in this case because Bach wrote it, but also from a voice leading perspective, minor triads aren't defined by their fifth, they're defined by their third, so when the fifth is absent, it doesn't really matter too much from an analytical perspective. So here we are seeing 1 go to 2-7. It's kind of interesting to see 2-7 in root position, but here we are. It's not unprecedented. And here we have another interesting chord. We have D, G sharp, E, and B, which is E7 over B, D natural, which is 5-4-2. And that resolves where we expect 1-6, C sharp, A, E, and A, which is our tonic triad, A major in first inversion. We then have a passing tone, another type of non-chord tone, a neighbor tone, and an escape tone, all together. And when we see the harmonic rhythm subdivided across all of the beats, I tend to analyze it. There tends to be a chord lurking there. So we have D, B, F sharp, and F sharp, and surprise, surprise, there is. That's B minor in first inversion. That's a 2-6 chord, and that's a chord that we would likely see in a cadential situation. That 2-6 chord goes to E major, E, B, E, and G sharp, which is a 5 chord. It's our dominant. 2-6 typically goes to 5, and then we cadence in a perfect authentic fashion on A major, A, C sharp, E, and A, which is our tonic. And that is today's analysis. It was a pretty straightforward chorale, not too many interesting twists and turns. When it comes to chords like these where I offer parenthetical analysis as well as the chord that I'm saying is the more likely of the two. It's not necessarily that I think one is any more valid than the other. It's just, as far as my analysis is concerned, the chord outside of the parentheses is more consistent with the way that I view the chord progression. So I think, all in all, I think both chords are valid analyses, and if I was looking this over, if I was grading an assignment like this, or if I was looking at someone else's analysis, I would see validity in both sides. And I like to offer that when I'm not entirely sure, but the analysis that I provide is a reflection of just my relationship with the music and how I was taught it. So take what you will from it. I try to offer varying perspectives whenever I'm unsure, because I feel like it's better to cover all of your bases when you aren't 100% certain. But for the vast majority of the chorale, there really isn't a huge argument. Most of it is consistent. I'd say really where the analysis could hypothetically be bulked up is right here in this section where we have the 2 going to the 1, going to the 2, going to the 1. But I really don't think it contributes too much to the chord progression, and it's just the way that I hear it. So that is all I will say about today's chorale. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. If this is the first video that you've watched of mine, I'm currently in the process of analyzing all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations, and if you'd like to go along with me on that journey, I upload once a day. You could subscribe and hit the notification icon so that you are indicated of when I upload if you'd like a daily dose of analysis, and more specifically Bach, analyzing Bach and his vocal music, his chorales. So I hope to see you on some of my future videos, if not all of my future videos. And again, thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.